Dzień dobry. Dzień dobry.
Hello, everyone.
Hello. What a pleasure to be here. What an honor. It's working, or it's better. Thank you so much. This is the first summit, so we are working on it, and we are going to improve it for sure. Ladies and gentlemen, what a pleasure, what an honor to be here at the opening of first Global Investor Summit, 2024, of course. And someone can ask a question. Why in Gdańsk? The government is in Warsaw, right? The president is in Warsaw, the parliament is in Warsaw, the stock exchange is in Warsaw. So why in Gdańsk? Does it make a sense? Yes, it does. This is the only place for a global investor summit. Because I'm not a businessman, I'm not an expert on finance, but as far as I understand, investments are about hope. Hope that the future will be better, that we are going to be fine, that we are going just to be better off. And this is the place where you can believe in it. If you are afraid of what's going on in Ukraine, we are afraid of Russian tanks in eastern Ukraine. We are afraid that Russian tanks could get closer to the border with Poland. Yes, it's a scary scenario, but let's not forget that in 1980, Russian tanks were actually right here. They were in Gdańsk, they were in Warsaw, in Kraków, in Zielona Góra. Soviet army was actually here in Gdańsk. Soviet Empire, with Leonid Brezhnev in Kremlin, was much, much stronger than Russia with Putin in power. And they did not only have ballistic missiles, tanks, and rockets, they did have ideology that was tempting for millions of people around the world. And that was a scary situation. And let's think about the situation in August 1980. And yet, Lech Walesa was here. And I was covering the Barack Obama campaign since the very beginning, and I really do remember how enthusiastic was the crowd from the very beginning when Obama was saying, yes, we can. And that was nothing compared to what Lech Walesa said at the end of a strike. I still remember it. I was 10 years old. He was on shoulders of workers from shipyard in Gdańsk. And right after the strike, when the agreement was signed, he said, powiedziałem, że zwyciężymy I zwyciężyliśmy I tak.
I said that we would win, and we did, and that's the short truth.
Tanks, rockets, ballistic missiles. He just won the freedom for our country, all together with other workers, with thousands of people from Polish opposition. You can win if you believe in it, if you hope. So if you want to have a hope for a better future, it's right here, not only in Gdańsk, but in the front of Gdańsk shipyard. So if we are going to talk about investments in a better future, if we are going to talk about hope, this is a place to be. This is the image, this is the place, and this is the man who should be here, Lech Walesa. But before I will invite Lech Walesa to the stage, let me introduce Agata Mazurowska-Rozdejcher, president of Harvard Club of Poland, and Maciej Grabowski, CEO, Center for Strategic Mindset.
My greatest honor to welcome you to Poland 2024 Global Investors Summit on behalf of the Harvard Club of Poland. 35 years ago, Poles chose democracy, which led to our country's economic growth, joining the European Union, the NATO, and other free world organizations, and becoming a partner in shaping our continent's future. As another great president, this time an American and an alumnus of our university, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, once said, "Democracy is never a final achievement. It is a call into an untiring effort. And we do not take democracy for granted, understanding the importance of events that led our country, that changed Poland, and we are turning to the future, ready to act. Investments have a significant impact on strengthening democracy and stability, building resilience and security of the state. During the next 2 days, we want to present Poland's current investment perspective. We will inquire what geopolitical, macroeconomic, and financial challenges and opportunities currently await us. We want to get acquainted with young Poland, new companies built with global markets in mind, talented CEOs creating ambitious projects, and new investment opportunities. As we initiate this journey, I would like to express thanks to our partner organization, EKF, European Financial Congress, with Professor Leszek Pawłowicz and Maciej Grabowski as its coordinators. Thank you for true solidarity in action. I think it's just the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, and I would like to say welcome to Gdańsk, but also thank you for accepting our invitation. This first time we organized together with Harvard Club of Poland this event. Certainly, I hope not the last one, because the investment markets are important for not only for shareholder profits, but also for state of our politics, democracy, or authoritarian regimes. But we want to talk how to support the democratic regimes and secure decent profits for your shareholders at the same time. As I said, capital is very powerful to stabilize democracy, but at the same time could be abused by the authoritarian regimes and eventually increase the risk in the financial markets. Yesterday, as Agata said, yesterday we closed European Financial Congress, and there we discussed the various recommendations, including these ones which are relevant for our meeting, how to strengthen democratic regimes in relation to the financial funds, to the financial markets. And for instance, we talk about that the rating agency should take into consideration risk related to investments in democratic or authoritarian regimes. We believe that European Security Market Agency should provide relevant instruction for investors. At the same time, we discuss also that the European Central Bank may consider to carry out stress tests in potential stranded assets in authoritarian regimes. There are just two examples, but rather practical one, how we can together increase stability of the markets, but also stabilize the democratic regimes. I wish you very fruitful discussion during these 2 days, and welcome to Gdańsk again. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, we did fantastic things in Poland over the last 30 and 25 years. But there is one thing we did wrong, I think. We still underestimate the value of Lech Walesa. Quite recently, I've made an interview with Vice President of one of the biggest companies in the world. It's top 3 in the world. It's an IT company. And the Vice President of this company told me in Warsaw that for the very first time in his life, he made a selfie a day before, because he was sitting at the dinner next to Lech Walesa. And he knows the current US president, all of the former US presidents. He never wanted to make a picture with them. He wanted to make a picture with Lech Walesa because he's a symbol of history. He's a symbol of victory of history, of victory of freedom. And he's a symbol all around the world. As a young reporter, I was covering the horrible war in Rwanda. Horrible. 1 million people died over the first 3 months. And I met first person in Rwanda, in Kigali. And this person, during the horrible war, asked me, how is Lech Walesa? In Rwanda during the war, how is Lech Walesa? That was the most important question for him. That's unbelievable. Mr. President, zaszczyt, że pan jest z nami.
Mr. President, it's an honor that you are here with us. Lech Walesa for you, ladies and gentlemen. Everyone is sitting, so will I. Ladies and gentlemen, I have a problem here. In such a short period of time, it's my second speech. I don't like to repeat myself at all. And over those 2 days or even a single day, I haven't come up with anything new. So please forgive me if I will be a little boring. But I will try to avoid the topics which I addressed then, a day or two ago. At the same time, I would like to ask you to understand me. With my presentations, I don't want to preach. I don't want you to think that I'm being smart. This is simply my viewpoint on these matters. I have a somewhat different point of view on basically every matter. I have a more practical point of view. And this practical point of view has led me through life, and I always won. Now, what I would like, and I try to do it in every speech of mine, I would like the post-solidarity generation, and I consider you to be such a generation, I want you to be successful. I do my best. I sacrifice myself, I meet people, because I want this generation, the post-solidarity generation, to succeed. And that's because solidarity with me destroyed the previous order. And it destroyed it in order to build the new order. And so, if you draw conclusions from the future, you will thank me and the former generation for your success. And if they don't succeed, you will be cursing me and solidarity that we led to this situation. So again, in my speeches, I try to highlight things that you might find useful in your success. It can't be very much structured because there are various components to it. So that's by way of introduction. I would like you to consider my point of view. You need to remember our times. The world has always been divided from Adam and Eve. And it developed then, and it took on speed, and many improvements were introduced. So structures needed to be increased and enlarged. Until the end of the 20th century, basically these structures were enlarged by making these structures more complex. Yes, you can see these two concepts of enlarging the world. Now, so you can see the weakness, weak and strong. The end of the 20th century saw another concept. We have to be larger in freedom, in solidarity, voluntarily. And so to me, as a revolutionary who thinks in practical terms, there is a question. Which concept is going to win now? The new one or the old one, based on strength and weakness? So practically speaking, I believe that the new one, the peaceful and democratic one, has a chance to win. But it should use the methods that solidarity used. We were in a much worse situation at the time. There was the Soviet Union, the Warsaw Pact. Did they want to get dissolved? No, let's not kid ourselves. That wasn't the case. So our methods, beautiful, peaceful and democratic methods, have resulted in a great victory. Of course, there's still Russia and China left. I've been pleased with those victories. And I wanted to put those places in order as well. I couldn't tell you this, but I started doing it. I started with Russia. I met various freedom-fighting people. I helped them as the president because I wanted to tear Russia apart and put it in order. I never talked about it before, but now I do. I was stopped in my efforts. Madame Albright came, a very smart woman. She came here and stopped me in my work because I would have led to it. And she very simply convinced me that I mustn't do it. Very briefly, she said, Mr. President, take no further steps in this direction. And I asked, what? I'm doing so well. Let's keep going forward. But she didn't have any debate with me. She just took out the map of Russia, she put it on the table and said, can you see these circles on this map? Yes, I can see, even without my glasses. Do you know what you can find in those circles? The worst weapons that you can imagine. But have you also noticed that where these circles are? In which locations? Well, you can see that they are not in Russia, but in the republics to which you want to give freedom. Do you know that they don't realize that they had these weapons? Just like you didn't know that in those times Poland had nuclear warheads. Did you know? Well, I suspected, but I didn't know for sure. Well, they wouldn't be maintaining them. They don't even know what they are. You would lead to a disaster. I didn't believe her, but I did check the facts, and it proved to be true. And from that point, I felt dissatisfied, felt broken, because my concept for building the wall did not work out. So I left it unfinished. But today, you need to listen, to think practically. But Putin has made a terrible mistake. He mobilized the entire developed world against himself. We have never had such a situation before in the world. So we have an opportunity, given such a mistake on the part of Putin. We have an opportunity to put Russia's situation in order. And once we do this, we can take care of China. And that is possible. But we have to use the ways of struggle in solidarity and in freedom, because even the powerful means of fighting, which are used now, even if Ukraine defeats Russia, it will be like I warned in the times of Gorbachev. I was friends with Gorbachev. We liked each other. But I told everyone and anyone, be careful. He is a Russian patriot. He works for Russia, not for you. He does perestroika, glasnost. He smiles nice, and he makes you dependent on his oil and gas, but he doesn't change the political system, because he knows that he will elevate Russia in 5 to 10 years, and that Putin will be there working, trying to reclaim the Soviet Union. People told me in the US, well, there was Stalin, there was Brezhnev, but Gorbachev, he's different. Leave him alone, don't pick on him. We will tear Russia apart, but leave him alone. What was I supposed to do? I left him alone. But like I said, luck is on our side. In this generation, we broke apart the old order, and now let's think how to build a new one. So again, trying to come back to what I want to tell you really. Oftentimes I hear democracy. I've heard it even today. I traveled the world, and to be honest, I have never seen good democracy anywhere, because democracy, which was invented by Churchill, these were different conditions. Churchill said democracy is not a good system, but no one has even come up with anything else.
And your generation can actually do it. If you really want to have democracy, if you want to have less fraud, less of crime in the world, please introduce what I, as simple electrician, propose. Introduce 3 elements to all political parties. The first one, you can't have more than 2 terms in office in any organization and longer than 5 years each. Then perhaps a break and then you can continue. And not being a member of parliament or a senator all your life. I mean, come on. So that's the first element. The second element. Please make everyone who has ever been chosen in an organization, make it possible for him to be also recalled. Under the condition, of course, that you will collect mock signatures against him than he collected when he was voted for, so that they have a feeling of responsibility. And the third element, make financing transparent, make it clear. If you're going to introduce that element, then young people will become active. You will not have all these fraud and corruption that we can still see, because people will behave the way they should. So that's this is my appeal. This is what I am asking you to do, to put stress on it, to introduce it into democracy, because democracy can be great, but only if we can improve on the initial model that Churchill spoke about. And the next few elements I wanted to share with you, next few points. I am totally convinced that technology that we have built is basically sending us a message. It's saying, you're not going to make it, you're going to ruin this world if you're not going to move onto management on a higher level. In other words, if you don't move from nation-based management rule onto continent-based or even global-based rule, no one, the States, China, no one will ever be able to control what we have created. What is required here is global management. Everybody has to fall in line. I used to say it when I was a worker. Maybe you've heard me say it before. You need to have a few smart people, get them together and get a few tasks. First of all, list all the topics, all the points that don't fit into national agenda. Add to those topics that make you uneasy. Once you have the list, the second task, please divide it, take a look at the list, and please decide which problems can be handled locally or on continents and which ones have to be addressed globally. Now here's your third task. After you've done that, please take a look at what sort of structures, what sort of financing is needed to actually put it in life. When I was thinking about these points, I was thinking about 5 to 10 truly global issues. And I was saying right away, I mean, please ask the United States to prepare solutions in these 5 topics. If we are going to like it, then they will be responsible for these 5 or 10 topics. They will lead the way and everybody else will fall in line in these topics, in these issues. And then going to the lower level, let's say about 30 continental issues, continental nature, Germany, France, Italy, and Europe leading the way, preparing concrete solutions. If Europe accepts it, like it, you're responsible for it. The rest is listening to you. Very simple concept. Now, as far as moving on to larger structures, I've defined 3 points, 3 issues. I mean, these are my ideas. They might be good, they might be bad, but I would like to give you some tips. Perhaps you can make use of them. The first point, we have to move from nation-based governance, management, to continent-wide approach. Now, how to do it? How to do it when we have such a such a division, such differences in development, such damage done in the past. So what foundation can actually bring those quarreling Europeans together so that they can start build together? And then at various meetings when this was discussed, this question was being asked, what sort of fundament can be shared by us all? And there are two ideas here. Let's say half of Europe, half of the world even, you might say, wants to base their future on the foundation of freedom, on free market, and of course the rule of law. And the second half is saying, no, no good. First, we need to decide on values, the values we are going to be guided by, and then the free market. And of course, both sides are pretty stubborn. They don't want to give way. So that's the first problem I defined. The second problem, okay, good, but let's say we've moved from nations to continent globalization. Then what sort of economic system are you going to employ in this new system? As you know, we have basically two systems: communism and capitalism. Theoretically speaking, communism looks better. And that's why many young people in the West support basically communist ideas. And why is that? I've taken a look at it. Well, then you have all the right words, justice, honesty. But, of course, young people don't take one thing into account, that it cannot be carried out in practice. All this beautiful theory cannot be put in practice. Whoever tried to introduce the communist system economically has created problems. That's why we're left with capitalism. However, you have to notice that capitalism means rivalry, competing, very often unfair competition. Some people call it a rat race between nations, a rivalry which eventually results in unemployment because many simply cannot keep up. So this new capitalism, when we move from individual nations to continent to globalization, should of course maintain free market, but set everything else somewhat differently. And the unemployed should be looked for and given work. Of course, they should be given smart work, decent work. But that can be done. That can be done in a continental global approach. When we had rivalry, competition, that was not quite possible. So that's the second issue I'd like to point your attention to. And the third problem we're left with, that not that many notice. Well, until the 20th century, basically all nations, countries have well, they didn't quite, of course, admit it, but generally they had God in their core. They had these religious values at their core. And basically we moved away from it. Back then, we were afraid of communism, of the Soviet Union, but we dealt with it. So a question remains: how to keep nations, how to deal with nations which do not have God at heart, so to speak, which are not afraid of anything. So these are the three issues I have defined, and I'd like you to point your attention to the fact that we can't go any further unless we do that. You can see for yourself what's happening in the world: France, Germany, Belgium. Quite soon Trump is going to win in the States. So even if you had the best, the most beautiful solutions, politicians will basically break it up for you. Now, what's the way forward? How can we save ourselves? Many of you are offended with politics, with politicians. You're saying it's dirty work. And it's true, in politics you mostly end up with waste. And not all, of course, but majority, yeah. They were not successful somewhere else, so they ended up in politics. So if you want to have better politics, you want to live better, then I appeal to you. There are moments in the lives of nations which require the activity of smart people, of intelligent people, people with good intentions who can put things in order and put the world in the right place. As a practitioner, I can see many things that others do not quite see as clearly. I've been told, I'm told by many people, we've already had technologies like this in the world. Think of pyramids. Thousands of years ago, we were able to build them, and it was all destroyed. And I was thinking, well, distraction. But the answer is very simple. What destroyed it? We can see now why these old civilizations were destroyed, because they went to a certain high level, similar to our level now, and instead of moving to another level, going higher up onto a broader approach, they stayed in their old frame of mind, and it led to distractions. Somebody attacked them and destroyed them. That's why I'm convinced we are now reaching such a point, and I am appealing to somebody to write in stone that Lech Walesa, the simple electrician, warned you that you're going to destroy yourselves if you're not going to move on to continental and global approach. If you are not going to take on difficult challenges, but ones that can only be done globally, because they cannot be done in any other way. This is all I wanted to say as far as introduction, and now I'm at your disposal. I'm sorry if I have bored you. Not bad for a politician, eh? So what's the plan? It was a fascinating moment when, Mr. President, you said who ends up in politics. And I was thinking, should I hope that somebody who's after you was listening to you, or perhaps they did not, because it's a minister. Well, when I was a president, all these smart heads, etc. I was asking all these experts, come on, get in, get involved. Of course, there are a few worthwhile politicians, but majority are not. Now, what did all these experts tell me? What did they tell me? They said, well, can't you see what sort of condition the country is in? Soon we are not going to have any bread left. We have to first make bread for you. We have to take care of the economy, and then later, well, jump in. And it was the way it was, and things happened, and I ended up where I ended up. But Mr. President was kind enough to say a few politicians are okay, so hopefully the next speaker hopes that he's among those few. He's definitely a smart man, a friend of mine. I wouldn't want to offend him. So two are okay. One of them is here, and the second is going to speak, right? Thank you very much, Mr. President. A place of honor for you. Right there. Thank you.
Of Solidarity, I just want to remind you that he's a champion of the world when it comes to speaking short before getting the round of applause. You remember November 1989, he said only two words in the US Congress, my naród, and the biggest round of applause in the history of the US Congress. Try to be better than that. It would have to be just one word. Good luck. It was Lech Walesa. Yeah, big round of applause. And when it comes to politicians, we have Minister of Finance with us, not exactly here, but almost here, because, you know, important things are going on in Poland. The parliament is working on the budget for the next year, so Minister had to be involved in it, but we really appreciate his time with us. And we are just celebrating the 35th anniversary of almost free elections in Poland on June the 4th. Anniversary, and 1989, of course, the elections. And now we are celebrating the 20th anniversary of first European elections in Poland. It happened for the very first time on June 13th, 2004. And we have the President of the European Parliament at that time, Pat Cox, who will be speaking later, but it's great to have you here, sir. Big round of applause for Pat Cox. And now the Minister of Finance, Andrzej Domański. Mr. Minister, we are celebrating our presence in the Union. And, you know, sometimes we will think in Poland that we could do something better. Maybe we could, but anyway, we use the presence in the Union in the best way we can imagine. No one did that better in the European Union, better than Poles. When you think about the way Poland looked like now, and when you think about the hard data, the growth of GDP, it was the biggest by far among all the countries that joined European Union in 2004, the biggest in Poland. So it is a successful story. So tell us more, Mr. Minister, why presence in the Union is so important for us. And maybe not so metaphorically, if an investor from New York, from London, from Singapore, somewhere in the world, or here is listening to you, why he or she should invest in Poland? Why it's the best idea to be here, Mr. Minister? Andrzej Domański.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, let me say that I'm really honored to speak to all distinguished guests gathered at the Global Investor Summit in Gdańsk. Unfortunately, I was unable to join you today in person at the European Solidarity Center, as just hours ago we finished cabinet meeting, and we are discussing very serious issues like Polish budget, minimum wage, so unfortunately I had to be in Warsaw. I'm nevertheless excited to share with you the message that is obvious for me. Poland is among the world's best countries to invest in. But let me start with a brief reflection related to the title and venue of the summit. Democracy, liberty, and the rule of law are crucial not only for peace, but also for prosperity. One of the most cited economists of our times, Daron Acemoglu, argued that liberal democracies thrive within the narrow corridor where balance of power between state and society is maintained. The Solidarity movement allowed Poland to enter this narrow corridor. The democratic revolution, which flourished in Gdańsk, was a cornerstone of the Polish economic miracle in the past 3 decades. Our obligation as leaders of the next generation is to keep our country on this safe path. This will help us achieve even greater prosperity in the future. This is even more important in our turbulent times. The last few years have been not kind to Poland and the rest of the world. We had to deal with many black swans. This, in turn, has lowered investors' confidence. In such conditions, companies need a predictable and transparent economic policy and a stable legal environment for their investment activities. Our government is deeply committed to secure an investment-friendly policy environment, and our sound institutional framework will only be strengthened. We are already delivering our promises. 2 weeks ago, the European Commission announced its decision to close the Article 7 procedure against Poland. Earlier on, we managed to unblock 137 billion euro in recovery and cohesion funds. The new government has improved our relations with the European Commission. This is not only a political change. International markets and institutions understand the value of this improvement. Let me say that the Polish stock exchange was one of the strongest since our victory. Polish zloty has also appreciated significantly. It is mirrored in better growth projections as well as stable outlook for our government credit ratings. We are clearing the field left by our predecessors, but we are also looking into the future. In recent weeks, I've met and engaged in a dialogue with the majority of business associations in Poland. We take their voice into consideration while crafting development strategies for the upcoming years. As you know, we have a solid economic base to start with and the solid data to prove the point. It is forecast that the Polish economy will grow at a rate of more than 3% this year. Next year, the Polish economy will grow at a rate of nearly 4%. The rate of unemployment calculated by country methodology was 5.1% in April, the lowest in 30 years. If we look at the Eurostat data, we have the second lowest level of unemployment in the EU. We also have a well-educated workforce with 94% of adults aged between 25 and 64 having completed upper secondary education, which is higher than the OECD average at 81%. This is one of the reasons Poland has consistently been one of the most attractive investment destinations in Europe and beyond. We have been attracting substantial foreign direct investments year after year. Despite the geopolitical instability caused by the war in Ukraine, Poland has experienced a remarkable influx of FDI. While there was a slight decline in total FDI inflow in 2023 due to a reduction in debt instruments, our country experienced a significant surge in new equity and reinvestment of earnings. These components of FDI have hit a 20-year high amounting to $29 billion. We have seen similar trends in the greenfield foreign direct investments. According to FDI markets, in 2023, Poland attracted 416 investment projects worth $21 billion. Poland tripled the value of announced investments in manufacturing in 2023 to over $10 billion. The robust FDI performance highlights the unwavering confidence that international investors have in Poland's economic stability and growth prospects. This is reflected in the 2023 Reuters Supply Chain Survey, where Poland was named as the most popular sourcing and reshoring location globally. In the same year, members of the Poland-German Industrial Chamber of Commerce and the International Investors Chamber of Commerce named Poland the best location to invest. Importantly, 9 out of 10 investor surveys reported that they would choose to invest here in Poland again. Importantly, significant investments are being made in new industrial sectors that Poland seeks to develop. Let me mention just a few examples. The EV component sector is flourishing, as well as the renewable energy sector. Intel's chip testing center will be the largest investment in Polish history and a sign that we are ready to join the global production chains of semiconductors. Other tech giants like Microsoft or Google are also investing here. Believe me, it is very pleasing to present such data at the Global Investor Summit. It is also rewarding when most prestigious media outlets compliment the Polish economic miracle. When the Polish economy is shown as a success story of transformation and integration into European and global markets. But we will not rest, as we want more. Personally, I like cycling. And in recent years, many accomplished cyclist champions from the World Tour concluded that even though they maintain their good performance, the new young stars ride faster and perform more consistently. As a result, it is much more difficult to win, even with high performance maintained. The same applies to Polish economy. We are eager to answer the key questions. Is the Polish current economic model fit for purpose in times of geopolitical instability, climate change, demographic decline in developed countries, and technological revolution? Our government is already working on answering this question and setting new development and investment targets that will allow us to strengthen our competitiveness. We have to perform better so the peloton of the global economy will not leave us behind. I've already mentioned Daron Acemoglu today. Let me quote him once again. Technological change is only one of the engines of prosperity, but is perhaps the most critical one. We are fully aware of that. We see the global net zero transition and digital revolution as the most significant transformation since the Industrial Revolution. Poland has its own history, which has impacted the structure of our economy. Our energy mix is still largely based on coal. 68% of electricity generated in 2023 came from coal-fired power plants. Therefore, embracing changes emerging from this grand transformation will not be easy. But we do not see them only as a threat. We will do whatever we can to use them as leverage for Polish development. We will use them to seek the new growth engines for our economy. First of all, we have to implement a comprehensive energy transition. Stable, green, and affordable energy will be one of the most important competitive advantages in the coming years. Our government is willing to deliver on this. Poland needs to make large investments in the transformation of the energy sector. We need to spend 170 billion Polish zloty on new energy sources alone in the coming years. However, these outlays offer an opportunity to make the economy more dynamic. And such investment will open a myriad of opportunities for Polish and international companies to secure contracts and gain new markets. Energy transformation can become a development vehicle for the whole economy. Every zloty spent on carbon neutral or carbon absorbing activities generates more than an additional zloty in the economy. This positive multiplier effect lasts for at least 4 years, and the impact on economic activity is 2 to 7 times greater than for environmentally damaging measures. In addition, investments in the energy transition create a lot of well-paid jobs. Poland is already becoming one of the EU leaders in terms of the number of jobs in the photovoltaic industry. In 2022, employment in the photovoltaic sector amounted to 147,000 people, accounting for 23% of all jobs offered in the industry within the EU. We also need a technological transformation in order not to lose the competitiveness of our economy. We have our homework to do in this regard. National R&D spending is only one third. It's one third lower than the EU average. In recent years, all the growth in spending has come from the private sector, with stagnant government and university spending. Moreover, Polish companies are still lagging behind in adapting new technologies. Let's look at the use of artificial intelligence tools in companies. In 2023, 8% of EU enterprises use AI technologies, but in Poland, this share reached only 3.7%. Even in the ICT industry, which is considered highly competitive and successfully competing in international markets, makes relatively little use of AI, and productivity per employee is 3 times lower than in Western European countries. Another example is a relatively low level of robotization, both regionally and in the EU. We see these challenges, but we treat them as opportunities. As a government, we will work hard to develop all the necessary policy tools that will enable faster and more profound usage of the new technologies in Polish private sector. We are thus ready to set the scene for all investors, both Polish and international, that could bring in their expertise, technology, products, and financial investment and join our efforts in transforming Polish economy. We would like to invite global investors to play an important role in the strategic transition to a new growth model of Poland and use substantial opportunities in a greener and digitalized world. Ladies and gentlemen, the legacy of Solidarity movement is a proof that Polish people are capable of doing great things. This is why I'm sure that we will manage to find our place in the transforming world economy. I therefore encourage you to consider Poland for your next investment venture. Please join us as we chart a course towards a sustainable and resilient future for our country and the whole Europe. Thank you very much for your attention, and I wish you all a fantastic summit in Gdańsk. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Minister. Andrzej Domański, Minister of Finance. When it comes to foreign investment in Poland, sometimes it's a funny story, because I'm proud and happy to be a member of Warner Brothers, Discovery, TVN Poland family here in our country. But Warner Brothers, I mean, the company was actually born in Poland. I mean, Sam, Harry, and Albert immigrated from Poland to the US, but they were born in a tiny village 1 hour drive from Warsaw. So when our bosses from New York are coming to Poland, we always say, welcome home, because the company was born in Poland. So we can have a slogan, come to Poland, because probably your business was born in our country. So you have to visit again. Come home, please, invest in our country. We have first panel just ahead of us with fantastic panelists and speakers. Elżbieta Bieńkowska, chairwoman of the Council of the Center for European Policy Studies in Brussels, former European Commissioner, former Deputy Prime Minister. Anna Kluns, United Kingdom Ambassador to Poland. Pat Cox, former President of European Parliament, and he was a president at that time when we joined Union in 2004. Iveta Radicová, former Prime Minister of Slovakia. Please join us on the stage. And we have a person who, in opinion of Lech Walesa, is okay. Jan Krzysztof Bielecki, former Prime Minister of Poland, the moderator of the discussion. It's a free country, Madam Prime Minister. I think it's a perfect location, perfect. I think it would be best for the moderator to sit maybe on, może tam, Panie Premierze?
Thank you very much for inviting us to this interesting panel. And I have a good news and a bad news. The bad news is that my distinguished colleagues worked quite hard to convey to you a few questions in advance, and probably you work hard for the next couple of days on the answers. But I was not really that aware of those questions, so if you don't mind, I will go slightly in a different direction. But if you don't like that attitude, you always can ask according to your pre-cooked question, not in accordance to my asked question. So theoretically, it's perfect. So that's the bad news. The good news is that Lech Walesa, who is in really good shape, and I know him for quite some long time, and then I can guarantee when he's in a good mood, he's really not only talking in a very interesting way, but he also is fighting for his way of thinking. So therefore, I guess he's also ready to make some comments on the topics raised by the minister. So if our panel needs a supporter, we can ask Lech Walesa to join us and to provide his, well, maybe one or two insights. Okay, so that's a good news. So coming back to the panel, problem number one for me is at when I was born, 1951, that was a day when the European Community of Steel and Coal was announced and established. So the founding fathers of European integration thought that trade and economic cooperation will protect us against future conflicts and wars. So no more war between Germany and France because we have the common industry, steel and coal, and later on some other industries as well. So that was the way of thinking. Then the European Community was established, and then of course we, behind the Iron Curtain, we watch it with some admiration as a fantastic solution for increased cooperation, integration, so. Then in 73, if I remember, Henry Kissinger went to Beijing or Peking, and he said, Chinese fellows, we do new opening, we trade, and through trade, we will, and that supranational cooperation, we will build new foundation for peaceful cooperation. Trade and peace, that was the recipe. And then, it's a bit pity that we speak about them without any presence to the panel, but then the Germans came with fantastic saying, Wandel durch Handel, which is the change through trade. And therefore, they invested heavily in Russia and became in 55% dependent on Russian gas and also some other raw materials. And the outcome, more or less, we know, which is, this is kaput. No more, probably. Nobody will now say, I believe Wandel durch Handel is a magnificent way how to change authoritarian regime into the democracy. Then, of course, in the introduction, and the minister also, they mentioned the Polish way. The Polish way was very different, because from day one we said we don't want a combination of free market and riot police, I call it like that one. So no authoritarian regime in order to do reforms faster. Even though there were some calls for a little dictatorship in order to facilitate and accelerate the changes. But so we changed the system first, constitution, and then were followed by the others, so kind of a chain reaction. And up to date, it goes more or less okay, even though Lech Walesa would like to change some constitutional rules, like to have 2 terms and no more in the parliament, yeah, which is okay. I did actually 2 terms and then I ran away. And he was chasing me actually, why I left him. So we have this Polish experience or Central European experience, and those those Western big thinkers, like Kissinger's, like the founding fathers of the EU, not to mention Churchill. Speaking from your profound personal experience, how do you find it today? Where are we today? If Durchandel is kaput, we speak about war economy. So does it mean that it's impossible to reach a change to those principles from the old days, from the 70s or from the 80s? And then we can go further. Is it okay, or you want this? It's a simple question.
It is a simple question,
yes,
if you do not mind.
And you know, our neighbor from the south is supporting us. Okay, that's
you
great.
know, Prime Minister, doesn't matter what you ask, we will answer what we wish.
Yes, I know.
It's normal. But first of all, let me say one important sentence from my side. Mr. President, you maybe have forgotten, because it's 10 years ago. I was a Prime Minister in the time, and we have invited you to 20th anniversary of Velvet Revolution in former Czechoslovakia in the time, in Slovakia, to 20th anniversary. And I will never forget your visit, because it was a very important impulse for many Democrats. And this is my first part of the answer. If the Democrats internationally are cooperating and support each other, then we are not lost. But if we closed our problems or challenges inside our small countries, except Poland and Germany, a majority of the states in the EU are really small, then we are not winners of transition. If we accept autocratization and dictatorships internationally, then democracy have no chance to survive. And what's going on today, from my perspective, as I understand it, maybe I am mistaken, but as I see it, we cannot compare first quarter of this century with the changes in last century, neither with the changes in 70s and 80s. The reaction in 70s and 80s, the last century, to the crisis and new challenges was transition of industrial societies to the societies based on public and social services. Therefore, in EU countries, the industry is really very small part of overall productive sphere of societies. The biggest industrial part is in Czech Republic and Slovakia. It's still 30%, but in northern part of the Europe, it's only 10%, nothing more. What does it mean concretely? It means that middle class is mainly employed in the sphere of public and social services. In other words, dependent on the force and sources of the state. The state is such strong as the production of economy is capable to create sources. Today, we are facing very extensive states with very strong redistributions, but facing deep changes in global markets, which are based on totally different principles. In other words, there is a paradox. Global market means competition, state extension, and strong middle class as a pillar of stability of the society means strong redistribution. In other words, at least equality of chances. Total different approach. So what we can do, how to answer this new challenge? Briefly, and I know it will be simplification, but I do not want to use too much time. First, what we can offer to the citizens. My point of view is always from the point of view of citizen. Okay, investment, investors, digitalization, and impact on everyday life. What this will do? Today, result is that we have polarized labor markets. On one side, it's a peak of the demand on low-qualified working force. Then there is a peak on very high qualified working force, very high, and middle class is lost. This polarization of labor market has a real consequence in polarized societies and polarized politics. Second, we are facing new technologies and digitalization, and people are living in two worlds, real and virtual. And there is a real gap. In virtual world, they are together with those who have same feelings, same attitudes, same understanding what's going on, so they are not feeling alone. In reality, they have to communicate also with those who have totally different attitude, totally different feelings, totally different position. And we are losing the ability to communicate, to have real dialogue. And last but not least, at the end, we didn't transit our democratic institutions to this new reality. We didn't create or didn't do just a digital transition. We didn't do nothing to cover digital inequality and digital poverty in the societies. And we create new inequalities and injustice. And people feel it. People feel lost. They do not understand. They do not know how to keep opportunities. What kind of opportunities? They are listening the sentence, you are formally educated, deeply sorry. This kind of education, labor market doesn't need. So you need to re-qualify. And once more re-qualified. Always citizen is guilty for the situation they are not responsible at all. Our mistake, we didn't do the reform of education system. Our mistake, we didn't do the reform of labor markets. Our mistake, we didn't do digitalization in all spheres of society. And our mistake, we didn't educate the people towards the information revolution. And this is the major point. That's why we are facing dissatisfied citizens, we are facing expectation gap, and we are facing the crisis of existing democratic institutions.
Thank you very much. It was like a little bit like a brief expose of the next Prime Minister. So, okay, so the next candidate for the Prime Minister, Elżbieta
the same question, yes? So whether
now I learned that my question doesn't matter at all.
No, but you know, I'm the one that always want to answer the questions, which is not a good thing, but I like to answer the question if somebody. So the question was whether we are still in the, where we are now globally or in the European Union, in Europe, where we are, whether it's possible still to exchange peacefully, to trade peacefully, or this is a different time in our history. And I think although we are still humans and probably it will change in a few decades, unfortunately we are now in a completely different point, because as Iveta said, I would say on the first place, the technology changed everything. The technology changed our lives. And this is one thing. The second thing is that we, again, I will repeat after you, we didn't establish, I think anywhere, in Poland definitely, we didn't establish proper education system. Although we tried and we started, it was completely broken and damaged. Education system, after, you know, after many questions that I was answering many times on where we are, what shall we do, what next, education is the most important, especially in this technology breakthrough that we live in. The third thing is that whether we want it or not, people in Europe feel insecure. People feel it. People do not feel safe. So that's why I wanted to make a link to the defense spending, because whether trade or we should really spend more and more on defense and on military, in the military sector. People in Europe, and also this last election showed it, they feel insecure. They need the government needs to answer this insecurity. Fortunately or not, we went through 8 years of such damage in Poland that really good and bad. So we are on the other side in a way. But still, this what societies now call for. They need for security. They call for defense spending. Unfortunately, this is how it is now. As you ask me about the picture, how the world or European Union looks now. You see what was the main subject of this finishing European Commission? Green Deal, of course. And now, where is the Green Deal? You know, we are asking now ourselves whether those stronger right parties or right part of the European Parliament, not majority, luckily us, but the stronger right part, whether they want to went back with the 1/3 of the Green Deal legislation. 1/3 is questioned. Whether this legislation, which is there, which is in place, which was voted, which was accepted, 1/3 is questioned. So I think that for now, again, we are still humans. We have our human features, and we probably the day will come when the direction will be different. But I don't think for now there is a situation right now when we can come back to trade as usual. Yesterday, European Commission put tariffs on electric vehicles from China. And this is just a start. And this is just a start. It is starting. It's 40% tariffs, but maybe we will go even further. So whether we call it trade war or whatever, this is unfortunately the world we live in. I think, okay, again, referring to Lech Walesa, we should be happy, and we are lucky that we are living in such times. that we get through communism. I'm 64. I was born 19 years after the war, 19 years. And now we are 35 years after freedom in Poland, you know? This is something which I'm a lucky person. And we go through communism, we went through NATO, EU, we survived peace, and we are still there. So that's it. I don't know whether I answered any questions, but okay.
No, thank you. You know, there's a famous saying by Mark Twain, which I really admire, and that could be with some adjustment useful for the present situation. If we should not be that worry too much about the answers to the questions, because we can always ask Walesa to answer them a little bit later. So, okay, so maybe we are getting a little bit closer to the original question, but so could you be so kind and continue on that tone?
I will try.
Or expose?
I will try. I think this feels like it's turned into quite a stressful panel, not least because we are in the middle of a pre-election period in the United Kingdom, and I have to be really careful about what I say. So I sit with politicians, and I'm afraid the worst thing is I will probably be very boring now in contrast with our colleagues. But I mean, a couple of things to say, I think, from my perspective, maybe three. I mean, one is that I feel actually I don't feel quite as pessimistic, I think, about where we are. I mean, I think, you know, the fact that 74% of Poles turned out for elections last year, I mean, this shows the strength of democracy. And we're in, as I say, in the middle of rather a vibrant campaign in the UK. Things are happening in France, things are happening across Europe. But I mean, I think whenever I think about the way that we have all collectively responded to the war in Ukraine, I come back to the values that we're all, that basically bring us all together. And so although I see the world as, and I agree, it's a really extraordinary and difficult time, but there are some things which we are together on. And the fact we now have 32 countries in NATO, the fact that we are together in a way, the fact that the West welcomed 10 million Ukrainians and have absorbed them into our homes and our society. I think there's a lot of real strength in what we are trying to stand up for and defend. I think my second point is about, and I think you're trying to say, your question around sort of how has the world changed. And I think we have seen that. We've been through some kind of extraordinary moments. I think Minister Domański talked earlier about Black Swan events, but I mean, you know, it's been a really challenging time. What I think the UK has tried to do is to stick to our principles about openness and trade. You know, I think these are the things that the UK has always been known for and continues to be known for. But I think what we are trying to do is continue on that path of openness, but in a way that de-risks the threat to us. And that's really complicated, and it needs really careful regulation and legislation. And it needs a lot of consultation with business about what that regulation and legislation looks like. But I think that is the approach that the British government has taken over the last years. And we have introduced methods that look at screening investments in the UK, that look at our export control markets, that look at our now looking to try and understand about overseas investments and the threat those pose back to the UK. And so I think across the whole economy, we are trying to make sure that we remain open, but that we find those areas that we are less safe and we do it. And the final thing I'd say, I mean, the phrase that I have heard used about our investment programme which is small garden, high fence. Have you heard this? Yeah. So, which is that we try and out of our screening regime, we had 1,700 notifications, of which 7% were investigated and only 1% were found to be a problem. And that whole thing is there to try and identify where the risks are and be really open and transparent with business about how we approach it. Right. I will now pass back to the politicians to say something a bit more colourful.
No, that was fantastic, because regardless whether Labour or Rishi Sunak will win next election, you will stay at this office with.
Well, I will be here, but
yeah. So,
I can't say anything about the policies of any future government.
Okay, so we have the former chairman of the European Parliament. So. Pat Cox, could you explain us a little bit?
Well, Mr. Chairman, you changed the question. I think I have to leave now. So, look, it's a great pleasure for me to be here, and it's wonderful to be in the presence of someone who is an iconic figure of freedom in Europe. When I think of freedom in Europe in my adult lifetime, I think of that man. It all began here with individual courage. And so it's already one lesson about democracy or autocracy. The power of one counts for something. And we have to understand that we each have that power at some level of self-expression. I want to come to some of your questions. There's absolutely no doubt in your opening remarks that 20 years ago, when China was knocking on the door of the World Trade Organization, there was a general presumption, incorrect as it turned out, that more trade integration and growth in China would democratize China. If you want to get a feeling for the zeitgeist at that time, I would recommend that you read Bill Clinton's last State of the Union address, where in effect he said, this will be good for Americans and it will bring freedom to China. In 2017, in the first fortnight of January, Donald Trump was inaugurated as president and described what had happened as American carnage in a very dark and black inaugural speech. And we know before then and since then, China operates behind the great firewall on the internet. And the role and power, the central power of the Chinese Communist Party has grown, and the centralization of power within the party has grown through, in effect, the lifetime capacity of Xi Jinping to remain as the paramount leader. If we come to the German example of which you spoke, that indeed was the German philosophy, and it was epitomized for a long period of time. It was continued by Schröder and by Merkel, but it wasn't invented by them. It was deepened by them. A thing that I found personally extraordinary is that we had the development of Nord Stream 1, with a very strong involvement, of course, of the former German Chancellor when he finished office, with, in my own view, lots of ethical issues around conflicts of interest. But let me park that. I won't deviate into that today. But what I found really extraordinary was after the annexation of Crimea, after the dirty war in Donbass, Germany signed up for Nord Stream 2. And so this was a failure to uphold fundamental values in terms of how you do business, who you do business with, and when you do the business. So I think your opening remarks are important remarks to unbundle for that reason. I myself, so to move around a bit, because we're kind of washing around rather than being strictly linear in what we're at today, I take great encouragement when I read today that the European Court of Justice announced a fine on Hungary of 200 million euros and 1 million euros every day for as long as Hungary chooses to remain in default of agreed European policy on asylum and migration. Now, I say that because our courts are one of the bastions of sustaining our democracies through checks and balance of good jurisprudence if the courts are free from political manipulation and if their authority and independence is respected. The European Court of Justice is an independent court. It's slow, but today's decision says something big. I'm not saying will that resolve the issue, but we need in our democracies strong, independent institutions. And I'm reminded, Mr. Chairman, of something that goes back in history but came up again about a century ago. At the time of Louis XIV, they introduced an income tax in France. And Colbert, who was the finance minister of Louis, said, relax about it, we'll be able to get through this. It's like plucking feathers from a goose. One at a time, they won't really notice. Mussolini took this phrase 100 years ago and said, if you pluck the feathers from a chicken one at a time, they won't notice. So let's stand back and notice. When you pluck the feather of active civil society by turning them into foreign agents and marginalizing and criminalizing them, it's a big feather. When you convert free media into a presumption that it is fake news because it doesn't suit you as honest news, that is plucking a feather. When you decide that your prosecution system and your judicial system has a job, and that job is to do what they're told by politicians, and not to do their duty in terms of justice and the common good, that is plucking a feather. And when you pluck the feather, you're on this fascist end of the spectrum within our societies. I'm not saying, jumping back, that you are a fascist, but you're in a spectrum. So the issue here about democratic struggle is which side of that spectrum do we want? And again, when I zoom up and stand back a little bit, I know in Europe we can have our European debate as if some way this was exclusive. But let me just underline, if you look at Freedom House, which does an annual survey of democracy and state of democracy in the world, for the last 18 years, it is telling us that democracy is in recession, that there's rising autocracy, that there's rising illiberal democracy. If I look at the past 2 decades in Europe, 2 decades ago, when Chancellor Schussel decided to bring the Freedom Party, Mr. Haider's party, into a government, he was ostracized. Today, these parties are mainstream. If I look at all of these trends and tendencies and ask, are they only ours? Unhappily not. The most consequential election of our lifetimes in the United States will take place in a few months' time. And it is in the same zone. So the problem to me is addressing the foundations of populism. Yes, there are socioeconomic foundations, I accept. But to do with politics, it's mostly strong men. And strongman politics is about weak institutions and about delegitimizing strong checks and balances. Strongman politics is about saying, I'm anti-system, I'm anti-elite, they will do you down, I am the answer. I am Vox Populi. I speak for the people, I know best. I don't agree with that kind of stuff, so we have to call it out, recognize it, and challenge it, each in our own way. The elections are one part. A final comment. I've read all of the publicity, and it is real, it is accurate, that the far right has made gains in the European Parliament election. Collectively, they amount to 23, 24% of all the deputies. If you're an investor community, one of the things you do is you deal with numbers. 23% means something else, that 77% isn't that. So you've got to look at what is, not only what is headlined. The second thing is that the 20-odd% has interesting elements within. Lots of reports that the Prime Minister of Italy, Fratelli d'Italia, gained seats. An impressive gain for Giorgia Meloni. She gained 14 seats. Less reports that Matteo Salvini and the Lega in Italy lost precisely 14 seats. So it was just a shift within forces within the right of Italy. And then when I look at the collection of people elected, perhaps they may get together and form themselves into one large group. But given their diversity in terms of policies, that may not happen. So the fact that they have numbers should not be presumed yet automatically to mean they have a power to match the number. And to flip the coin, they certainly will have more power. They will nominate commissioners, they will sit on the European Council, and they will seek to influence the European Parliament. The immigration, I think, will be the most sensitive issue. And on the Green Deal, a final comment, if I could make it, not to do with detail and so on. We know the physics of climate change and global warming, like for 2 centuries. It's not new science. The physics is simple. If you pump more greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, the layer of protection, the layer of insulation grows. If you insulate this house, it stays warmer. If you insulate the globe, it gets warmer. And we know what it produces. This week alone, there are shocking heat waves in Turkey, there are shocking floods in Spain, there are shocking fires in Greece, and that's only this week. So the physics would not change. The politics may, but in the end of the day, the cost of neglecting to act will be dearer than the cost of acting, and the physics tells us that this will continue no matter what politicians say and think.
Okay.
Yes. Next.
Okay, so I'm really happy that we are moving in the right direction with some turbulence, but nevertheless, we also that way addressed Lech Wałęsa's point that we must look at the, as he called it, continental solution. So we didn't speak that much about the EU, but we spoke about Europe and some institutional expectations, some big challenges facing, how improve the democracy, and that was, to some extent, summed up in an excellent way by Pat Cox. So we are moving at the continent level. So if you want to continue, I'm now very flexible, so without any further question, I will hand over.
To the last remarks on Green Deal and on those right-wing or far-right parties that gain a lot of seats in the European Parliament. They are questioning this. They are challenging those scientific, evidence that we know, and that's why each and every, as you know, in the European Parliament, we are moving now to the European Parliament, in the European Parliament there are no fixed coalitions. It's not like in the national parliaments when there is government and the opposition. There are no fixed coalition. On each subject, you can create or you can negotiate or you can discuss the coalition. And this will be much more difficult than it was before. Because okay, and we are happy that still the main center parties have a majority, although we'll see how it will be with the first voting on the president of the European Commission, but still they have majority, but they are very, I really do not understand, for example, Konfederacja in Poland, 12%. What they say, because they are vocal about we will change the direction in European Union is going. I don't know what it means, because they do not explain what way they will change the direction the European Union is going. What we, again referring to Lech Walesa, we need to make, and sitting by British ambassador, we need to make European Union stronger. We need to make stronger this community that is really protecting us, that especially in Poland brought us prosperity, brought us security, brought us investment, brought the complete change of our lives. And stronger European Union means that we will be stronger as national states or countries. This is important to to repeat this, because, you know, a week ago or 2 weeks ago, I had a discussion with the students of 15, 16 years old. They didn't understand what I was talking about. They were born after we entered the EU. They do not have a clue what I was talking about, the communism or the whole struggling, you know, for years. And I'm very confident that this moment where we are now is really very crucial moment for Europe. It must reinvent its security and defense policy, which was not there for years. It must still continue with the Green Deal, which will be much more difficult. And it must live with all of those very strong parts of the European society that we saw we saw them in the during the European election. These are for France, for Italy. You mentioned them, Pat. So France, Italy, Germany, AfD, Poland, Confederacja. These are the groups that we need to address. And this is, I think, the most difficult question that we have in front of us.
Okay. Do you want to continue how we want to improve Europe? Or we can go on and with some...
I would like to push us a bit further, not to be closed inside, because we are facing three trends. Global anti-globalization, popular populism, and international nationalism. This is what's going on. And all these three trends are so strong as the offer of democracy is weak. What we can offer, what lessons we have learned, not only in Europe, we cannot be closed in this continent, because globally, democracy at this moment is a regime only for 13.6% of population. It means 5.7 billion people lived not in democracy, but in different regimes. We have decided for democracy, yes? Not only in Europe, around the world, in different countries, different kinds of democracies. And I'm thinking all the time, as a sociologist, as a politician, what we can offer to the people, what kind of not only real facts, but emotion, which will be more attractive than the populists are doing. Populists have very easy task. Find the enemy, fight with the enemy, divide society to people and elite, and last but not least, polarized, 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 and build the borders and frontiers. So, what we can offer? Human dignity, solidarity, tolerance, and plus major values like wealth, beauty, goodness, to be good, and justice. Why we are talking about, only macroeconomic results, billions invest to there, and where are the billions? I have to see it in everyday life. I have to know that if good electrician come to my house, I can be proud that he will do perfect job. If politician is doing the job, I have to be proud and trust him that he is trying to do really the best thing and good things for inhabitants, for ordinary people. Why we do not trust to politicians? Why we do not trust to institutions? Because there is real gap in between traditional politics and ordinary people. And we have a chance to build the bridges. We have to start, sure, in socio-economic situation. We cannot be still in the situation that we have absolute and relative poverty in Europe. And we have it. We cannot be in the situation that there are socially excluded whole groups of the societies. I am really unhappy to say it and to see it. We cannot be in the situation that young generation is leaving our countries. And we cannot be in the situation that old pensioners are really part of poverty in our countries. So these are challenges for me, and if then somebody here, Green Deal and investment and digitalization, come on, what we are talking about. They are real everyday problems, and we have to show we know what to do, and do it immediately. Otherwise, the gap in between politics, democracy, and real life will be deeper and deeper. And this is the major lessons learned from 30 years of democratization.
Thank you. So I understand. So we have some prescription how to improve democracy and the institutions inside Europe. And we have some further requests for the floor. But if you don't mind, I will a little bit postpone that because we have a voice from the audience, and it's a kind of a strong voice. So I don't dare to.
Publika. Szanowni Państwo, chyba zacząłem od takiego...
Ladies and gentlemen, I've started by saying that we need to understand the times we live in. For me, as a practitioner, it's very simple. To our generation has to live at a time of transformation due to technological development. From individual countries, from blocks, are moving on to continents, globalization. We have an epoch of intellect, globalization. We are in between. I've called this the epoch of war, discussion of what the future should look like. Everything that we have had so far, the left, the right, Christian Democrats, etc., none of that fits today's times. Because back then we had the interests of individual countries, states, even the Nazis were all for interest of Germany. Now the technology is saying no. Continent for the technology, globalization of the technology, but how to move away from that order. The entire discussion, I was listening to it, and we are still sticking to the old ideas, you know, a nation, a country, improving everything, pulling it forward, but they would like us to pull instead of push. I would like us to actually decide that we need to define the left, the right. We can't require or demand that people belong to certain parties, especially Christian Democrats. I've been looking at Christian Democratic parties, and Christian Democrats, you don't even have a single believer there in those parties very often. You can't actually build on that foundation. You can't build on that old fundament anymore. For me, it's a question of what to start with. And we have moved away from God itself. In Poland, you know, even the church got into trouble. After all, what can you demand from people who've lost everything? Values, God. But on the other hand, Poles have also, we all have a great opportunity as well. Crisis means opportunity, chance, but we have to jump away from this, get off these old rails of national thinking. We have to be more continental, global. You're still thinking in terms of nations, individual states, how to improve situations in your local backyard. No, you can't do it like that. You have to plan globally. Of course, it's difficult, but this is, I think, the ultimate task that this generation has. And I do believe that we are now at the time when we are discussing, we are talking of what this new solution should be like. And I do hope that we'll come up with some good ideas of what can actually be done. The world has to change because the old order has broken and something new is appearing. But in order to build something constructive, we have to convince each other. We have to find new solutions and not to go back to the old ones. Some are saying that this is not possible, that we can't reach an agreement here, that we will basically self-destruct. But, well, that's all from me. Thank you. Niestety, unfortunately, we can't hear the speaker.
We talk a bit how to improve. President wants us to introduce a bigger change. In a nutshell, that was the point. But because we are at the investors forum, and we try to combine democracy and investment, let me now, because we are slowly coming to the end of the time designated for the panel. Let me ask, but do you believe that investors like the democracy, like strong institutions, like strong regulations, good regulations, functioning single market? Where did you find evidence that this is what the investors are looking for? Maybe they don't like the democracy. They like more. We speak about the friendshoring, something like that, which in the context could have that the friend is more democratic like ourselves and share the same liberties, but it's not transformed into evidence. Empirical, there is no evidence that democracy and investment go hand in hand. So maybe our conversation is a little bit...
Well, look, I would like to come in if I could. One thing you've got to do if you're at an investment conference is avoid turning the place into one great big cloud that rains on you all day and sends you home depressed. The whole purpose of an investment conference is to have a sense that there is a dynamic in the future and it's worth investing in. So I want to make one big point about EU politics that I think will matter in the coming years, will not be easy, will be contested and must be done. And that is we're going back to look again at enlarging the European Union. In my view, enlargement has been the most transformative policy of the European Union. And if I want to take an example, let me take this neighbourhood. Ukraine, which was a republic inside the Soviet Union, and Poland, which was in the Soviet bloc. If I go back to 1990, your income per head was about the same. Your infant mortality was about the same. Your longevity, how long did you survive after birth, on average, was about the same. In the years since then, in which your membership of the EU has been an important context, and your willingness to transition and reform an important Polish input, your income has gone up radically and is 3 times higher than, per head than Ukraine today. Your infant mortality rate has gone down radically, and your survivorship has gone up appreciably. So just talking about the impact of big things on people's lives, kids that survive, us staying healthy and living longer, and having a reasonably better income than we would have had before, these are real things. Please do not talk them down. These are realities of the transformative capacity of enlargement. And if I go back further, the first enlargement, Great Britain and Ireland and Denmark, 1973, my country entered the then European Economic Community as the poorest region state of the entire system, and has ended up transformed after 5 decades into one of the richest. Is it perfect? No. Heaven doesn't exist on earth. Perfection isn't available. But is it a damn sight better than when I was a schoolboy? The answer is yes. If I look at the Iberian Peninsula, Spain and Portugal, or go to Greece, joining Europe helped to underpin and sustain their post-fascist democracies. Really important. If I look to Central Eastern Europe, for all the complaints people can have, Mr. Orban choosing to turn Europe into the enemy and the need to occupy Brussels. It has had a transformative, positive effect also on Hungary, not acknowledged by its authorities, but lived by its people. So we've got to understand that. And on investment, people invest in China, people invest in Poland. We heard the figures. Investment looks for a rate of return and a reasonable presumption of certainty that that return can be there. I think when you invest in a place which is a democracy, which respects the rule of law, which has a good system for adjudicating contractual business disputes, when you've got regulatory certainty, these are important de-risking dimensions for any company. I'm chairing 3 companies, so I don't do politics anymore. And I can tell you one thing, we invest where we think we've reasonable certainty, where we have good law, and where we have good partners among stakeholders. And those things matter in investment, and that's why these issues, the rule of law and the things we talk about in democracy, are not airy-fairy academic issues. They're hardcore, important issues for individuals, but also for investors. Certainty de-risks, good law de-risks, these matter, and that should be a message from this platform.
Okay. Time for the British to find the response.
Well, I just wanted to build on it. I mean, I think the thing is there's big issues and then there's sort of small, aren't there? And I agree, it's all of the, the rule of law matters. When I talk to investors, I mean, Poland is a really exciting place to invest, but they want transparency in the regulatory system. They want law to be better. They want to be treated, with a level playing field with domestic investors. They want certainty and to understand what's the net zero plan, how's it going to be achieved. These are the things that people want. So they're actually all of those are the sort of practical manifestation of the big ideas that we've been talking about, and they all matter. And I think I mean, again, they're very positive. The final thing I wanted to just comment on is that I think, and I understand this panel, we talk a lot about the European Union, but actually I think we also think about security of Europe as a whole, about the relationship. I mean, certainly from my perspective, we've got a trade and cooperation agreement. We've found a different way of cooperating with EU countries, but actually, if anything, from a UK perspective, I think the partnership, the way that we're working together on these issues is through NATO, through initiatives like the Europe-wide EPC, the European Political Community. We're having to invent things that help us be stronger, but I think they're there, and I think the challenge that we have from Panie Prezydencie is to use them effectively to take the big issues and then deal with the small. Thank you.
Okay.
I think we have direct answer to your question. There is empirical evidence that investments in autocratic or authoritarian regimes are losing their investments during 10 years, decrease by 15% of GDP. It's measured. That's reality. Second point, I have bad news and good news. Bad news. As we have serious teachers, serious physicians, serious politicians. We have serious investors, but also opposite. I was a prime minister during the financial crisis. And you know what have happened. And you know that in that moment, investors, financial markets asked politicians, help us, we are in total crisis, there is a collapse, do something. Okay, we have done something, but my only question in that moment was, please introduce me concrete person financial market. Who is this? I would like to talk with these responsible persons. I would like to see them. I would like to negotiate with them because they are nobody. They are covered. For me, financial market is nothing if I do not know concrete responsibility, concrete persons, and therefore concrete then effects on their own further business. This is bad side of my reaction, because in that moment I was under the pressure, and for me the only solution was to sacrifice my own government because of common EU solution. It was the hardest decision in my life. The good side of investments and investors is, if they invest to the best thing they can, and it's social capital, it's to the people, it's to their education, to support innovations, to support new ideas. In other words, to do social responsible investment. And we have very good and widespread examples. Say it in normal human language, mean, if I walk around the streets and I see sitting beggars on the street, I cannot feel comfortable, not at all. And I cannot feel successful, not at all. So I see the future and positive lesson learned from democracy in socially responsible firms, business and investment, and mainly investment to human capital, social capital, to their equality of chances. And then we are real citizens, only then.
Thank you very much. Pani, it's okay. So we are supposed to finish at 3, if I understand well. Maciek, okay? Because I'm a bit nervous, because it's okay.
Don't worry, be happy.
No. I'm happy and nervous at the same time. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, sometimes we went forward a bit, sometimes we look a little bit backward, but nevertheless we try to adjust to President Wałęsa's expectations that the continental view is a minimum for us, and we should do the change, not only to do the little improvement. And there was a famous Italian coach who was running the Premiership club, and they caught him not do the tinkering, yes, but tinker.
Okay, tinker means sort of.
Yeah. So we try not to be a tinker, but to be bigger, up to President Wałęsa's request to be a bigger innovator and change maker in order to build a specific European climate for for business growth and development. Okay, that's maybe some kind of a compromise. However, in the European way, with quite strong and functioning institutions. And maybe one point which it's pity that we actually didn't reinforce regarding enlargement. Because before, 25 years ago, we spoke about enlargement as frequently as about food, you know, or meal. You know, from early morning up to the evening, we talk enlargement, enlargement, and then the old union spoke about deepening, and we spoke about enlargement, enlargement. And now, and it's good that Pat Cox turned our attention to that, because we've forgotten about it. Now we are saying, no, enlargement is finished, no more enlargement because we are in, so let's build a border and defend it. And enlargement by Ukraine is too risky, so it's better to keep the enemy at the gate or whatever. So this is also good and important that and probably also conducive to the investment climate and opportunity, because it is broadening the market, internal market, and then the single European market is getting stronger and stronger. And hopefully even the UK will in some form return to the single market in the future. This is a bit optimistic now, maybe?
Yes, it's a bit optimistic. Just one sentence, because I always need to say it as I hear about enlargement. We are talking about Ukraine. We are forgetting that for 20 years, Balkans have been kept in the corridor, ticking all the boxes, and they are not allowed even to open the door. And we see what is the result of such actions or no actions after 20 years. They are under influence of Russia and economically under influence of China. That's it.
So we conclude saying that the continental future could be better if enlargement process is going on and the market is bigger and bigger, and the institutions are standing by democratic values we all fought in the days when we were young and beautiful and charming. Amen, said President. Thank you. Amen. Amen. Thank you very much, dear panelists.
Yeah, thank you so much to all the wonderful panelists, Iweta Radicowa, Elżbieta Bienkowska, Naklons, Pat Cox, Jan Krzysztof Bielecki. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed the moment when Prime Minister Bielecki offered a choice to his panelists. You can answer the question or deliver an expose. This is the reality of a journalist in the news media. You're asking a question, usually hear the expose. Thank you so much. It was a great panel. Coffee break, half an hour. See you in half an hour.